Rector, Bishop, Dames and Herren, it is my very great honor to accept this doctorate so kindly conferred by the Radboud University of Nijmegen. This is now my second visit to the university. Both have been occasions of stimulus, delight, and encouragement. And I hope there will be more visits to come to build the relationship so generously created by your friendship. We heard earlier on from Professor Falke a quotation from the Psalms to begin with. And I wish to begin in the same way, because it is always a good idea to take one's precedent from astrophysicists who, after all, tend to know what happened before. And this is, as it were, the other side of the vision that has been laid out so wonderfully for us in the remarks you heard earlier. Not only are we invited by the psalmist to consider the heavens, we're invited to consider ourselves. What are human beings that you are mindful of them? Now that question, what are human beings that God should be mindful of them, is a question which any university of Catholic and Christian foundation is bound to take very seriously. And in the light of the scientific vision that has been uncovered by modern physics, it may seem a more pressing question than ever. If we are indeed a grain of sand upon a grain of sand, what are we that God should be mindful of us? All education that is worth the name begins from some conception of an answer to that question, some conception of the deep worthwhileness of human beings. And the point of a university which treasures its Catholic and Christian foundation is surely that it is committed to exploring the Catholic and Christian perspective on that question. And while there are many, many ways of unfolding what such a Catholic and Christian perspective might show, I want very briefly to mention three aspects of an answer to the question which this tradition brings to light. The Catholic and Christian conviction about human nature sees human beings as capable of three major and unexpected activities. Unexpected in just the sense we heard earlier, that to have material stuff capable of these things is a bit of a surprise. We've already heard that faith, hope, and love are three activities you might not think matter capable of. But let's broaden that a little and suggest that human beings are capable of art, politics, and contemplation. Art, politics, and contemplation. We are capable of art. That is, we interact with our environment. We don't simply receive impressions or reproduce what is given us. We innovate. We make a difference. We take some of those other grains of sand that lie alongside us and create patterns with them. We put those grains of sand that lie alongside us under microscopes and construct exhilarating stories of the millions of years of history encoded within them. because in a rather old-fashioned way, I believe that science is part of what we mean by art. To see more deeply, to make a difference, to decode and create patterns. Surely these are activities both of art and of science. And in both of them, imagination is at work. And in that Christian and Catholic perspective, we believe that human beings are capable of this imagination and innovation because they carry the reflection within their lives of a God who is imaginative, who creates from nothing, who makes pattern, and, in the wonderful words of one of the apocryphal texts, looks into the depths. We're capable of politics. We think about how we relate to one another. We think about how our words and our acts create systems of power for good and ill. We look at our life together and we ask questions about it. The point at which the life of Homo sapiens begins in the history of our world is surely bound up with the moment where some proto-hominid asked another proto-hominid, in whatever passed for language in those days, does it have to be like this? Where, as critical questions began to be asked, something of the imaginative and innovative spirit that applies to the world around began to apply also to the relationship between human beings. We became capable of politics, of thinking about justice, fairness, about the patterns of including and excluding people, the powerful theme of the bishop's homily at the Mass this morning. We think about how people find a voice to work out what is the common good. And just as with art and science, so with politics. This is an aspect of our humanity, reflecting something of the way in which God, our Creator, has imprinted his likeness upon us. Because our God is not a God who simply sits in isolation, waiting for submission, but a God in whose very being relationship exists, and a God who reveals himself to the world by creating relationship. Not at all a surprise, then, if those made in God's image turn out to be capable of politics, looking critically at how they live together and seeking ways of giving more and more people a voice. But beyond all that is our human capacity for contemplation. Perhaps one of the most surprising things about our humanity is that for all its restless activity, its intellectual intensity and creativity, it is capable of being still, of being silent, absorbing the reality before it with joy, with gratitude, but in stillness. We are not fully human unless we take completely seriously our capacity to be still. We are not fully human if all we do is feverish activity. We must learn to breathe. We must learn to sit. We must learn to look. And in breathing and sitting and looking, we find our humanity just as much as in the restlessness of art and science, and the complexities of politics. The God who has made us ultimately for his joy, has made us to be happy in the sight of him. And that is the rationale for contemplation. Now, if all those who educate have to ask the question at some point, what is the human being we are trying to educate? That is the answer that this particular tradition gives. The human being we seek to educate is capable of those things. Capable of imagination, whether in art or science. Capable of the struggle for justice, participation, honesty in society, and capable of stillness, and the joy that arises in stillness, like water in a pool. It's probably not a set of criteria that immediately makes a great deal of sense to those who look after the national finances of educational institutions, whether in the Netherlands or in the United Kingdom or worldwide. And yet, universities with a foundation like ours, I'm happy now to say ours, are bound to keep that argument alive by asking about all their activities, their priorities, their expenditure, the structure of their courses. How does what we do serve a humanity destined for those three things? How does our education and the forms of our life together, how do those help people grow in imagination and innovation, in a concern for justice, in a capacity for stillness, breathing, sitting, and looking? It seems to me that universities with Christian and Catholic foundations, when they've moved beyond the days of narrow confessional identity, still have the most crucial role in our society, exploring and defending the full range of what human beings are capable of, reminding our society what sort of people make it up. Around us every day, and in what seem to be the most unpromising circumstances, there are men and women destined for art and politics and contemplation. Can our society do justice to the fullness of that human mystery? Can our educational system do justice to that fullness? At the very least, here is an institution which has promised to try to do just that, to be faithful to that witness and that vision. It is an enormous honor for me to be invited to be part of that enterprise in this university. I hope and pray that I shall in some way be able to join in those conversations and reflections which this university undertakes as it seeks to fulfill its calling. But for today, my main task, Rector, friends, is once again to say, with all my heart, thank you for the honor done, the welcome given, and the friendship created.